All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. So in this video, I want to talk about a bodybuilder named Bertil Fox, aka Brutal Bertil Fox. Now, he earned that nickname somewhat notoriously. This is a bodybuilder that was convicted of murder. He murdered his former fiance and her mother. So I'm going to go into detail about that during the rest of this video, but it just so happens that Bertil Fox was actually a very successful bodybuilder, and he had a very crazy physique. It makes this all the more sad and all the more weird that he would do something like this, and it really tarnishes his legacy, or destroys his legacy even, as a bodybuilder. So really, I think a lot of people don't talk about Bertil because of these things that happened. But the reality of the situation is, man, Bertil Fox's physique was one of the best physiques to come out of that era of bodybuilding. He competed primarily in the 1970s and the 1980s. So most notably would be the 1983 Mr. Olympia competition, where Bertil Fox actually placed 5th. So in my opinion, this was the one Mr. Olympia competition where you could make the argument that Bertil Fox was an uncrowned Mr. Olympia. He certainly deserved to place higher than 5th. I think you could make the argument that he deserved to win, but overall, I think Samir Bannout was the rightful winner that year in 1983. But that was probably the best Bertil Fox looked compared to his rival competitors. 1983, this was before the era of Lee Haney and after the era of Arnold. So the Olympia was kind of wide open for a new champion to come in and take that title. So in my opinion, some of the shots that you can see from 1983, Bertil Fox, I think he definitely dominates his fellow competitors. He was beaten by guys like Frank Zane, Lee Haney, Muhammad Makawe. But some of the side-by-side shots of him and Samir Bannout, I think he definitely looks a little bit better, if not significantly better than Samir Bannout, especially in the side chest shot that I'm showing you guys right now. So Bertil Fox was, he was a competitive bodybuilder, man. He was a high caliber bodybuilder. He was 5'8", or 172.5 centimeters tall. His competition weight was between 235 and 245, or 106.6 to 111.1 kilograms on stage. He had 22-inch arms, which is absolutely massive for that time period. And he is a British bodybuilder. Again, his nickname was Brutal Bertil, and he actually even had that nickname prior to the murders that he committed, so it's kind of a foreshadowing of what would come. So yet again, we have another great bodybuilder that won the NABBA Mr. Universe competition. So Bertil Fox, he won his first NABBA Universe in 1977, and that was the amateur NABBA Universe. And then in 1978 and 1979, he would win back-to-back professional Mr. Universe competitions with NABBA. So again, the NABBA Mr. Universe at that point in time was one of the best, if not the best, title you could win in bodybuilding. Now in the late 70s, I think the Olympia had more or less began to take over as the most prestigious title. But prior to that, as I've said in many videos, the NABBA Mr. Universe competition was the crown jewel of bodybuilding and was the most important show of bodybuilding. And I think when we're talking about bodybuilding history, we should not forget that. A lot of people commonly make the mistake that the Olympia has always been the #1 game in town, but that's simply not true. I try to remind you guys that in every video, that this NABBA Mr. Universe competition had some of the best bodybuilding champions come out of NABBA that we've ever seen. And most of the bodybuilders that we talk about today, like Schwarzenegger, Bill Pearl, Frank Zane, all these guys have won the NABBA Mr. Universe before they won the Olympia. So in 1982, Bertil Fox would make his Olympia debut and place 8th. So that's not too shabby for a guy that has never competed in the Olympia before, to debut at the Olympia and place 8th. And obviously, as I mentioned before, the following year in 1983, he would place 5th. He would skip the 1984 Olympia, but in 1985, he would place 7th at the Olympia. In 87, he would place 12th. And in 89, he would place 11th. And then his final year of competing, he would place 13th at the 1994 Ironman Pro Invitational, following a 16th place finish at the Arnold Classic 2 years prior. So unfortunately, just 4 short years after his final competition, he would be convicted of murder. On May 22nd, 1998, he was convicted of murdering his former fiancée and her mother. So his fiancée was 20 years old, her name was Lyoka Brown, and her mother was named Violet Brown, and she was only 36. They were both fatally shot with a gun owned by Bertil Fox, who was 46 at the time. Fox was previously engaged to Lyoka Brown and was at the scene of the crime when the shootings occurred, and was then arrested and charged with both murders. So Bertil Fox actually had two trials. The first trial was a hung jury. In the second trial, he was convicted, and he was actually sentenced to death by hanging. And they actually ended up appealing that decision, and he got life in prison instead of death by hanging. Now, in Bertil Fox's own words, he believes that he received a lot of unfair press going into this trial, and that's why he was convicted. I don't really know if he still claims to be innocent or not, but I guess, the major media outlets covering this, obviously, as they tend to do with bodybuilders, they kind of direct it towards roid rage. Just this big, aggressive, juiced up guy murdered his fiance. And that's kind of the way they covered the story, was that this bodybuilder had roid rage and out of anger shot his fiance and her mother and made him out to be this monster. So Bertil believes that that kind of media coverage is what impacted his immediate sentence to death, why they were so quick to jump to that death sentence when he was initially convicted. And he was pretty upset about that, apparently. So obviously Bertil Fox's legacy is always going to be tarnished by the fact that he was a murderer, and rightfully so. That should kind of overshadow anything he achieved as a bodybuilder, because murder is murder. It's horrible. It's the highest form of crime, in my opinion. It's just absolutely, it's unreconcilable. But as far as bodybuilding history is concerned, I think Bertil Fox is still a very important part of that bodybuilding history. And he did leave a legacy on bodybuilding, despite what he did after his bodybuilding career. During his time as a bodybuilder, he definitely made a large impact on the bodybuilding scene. Again, winning the NABBA Universe 3 times, placing 5th at that 1983 Olympia, which I think he probably could have placed as high as 2nd, even been in that 1 and 2 call out with Samir Bannout. I think would have been a good call out for him. So definitely, in my opinion, one of the most impressive bodybuilders by far to come out of the 70s and 80s, regardless of what he did when his career was over. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.